will control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this week's episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today we're covering an episode of The Night Gallery. This is season 3, episode 5, and there's two stories in this one. One is very short at the end, and I won't spend too much time talking about that. But the main bulk of this story is taken up with a story called You Can Come Up Now, Mrs. Millikan. This was directed by John Badham and written by Rod Serling, which is nice to see, adapted from a piece of work by J. Wesley Rosenquist, a short story called The Secret of the Vault. And apparently the story was originally titled The Vault, but they changed it to You Can Come Up Now, Mrs. Millikan. There was some interesting stuff going on. Probably the most interesting thing about this episode is there's a pair of scientists, a scientist with a wife, a married couple played by Ozzie Nelson and Harriet Nelson respectively. These were famous from American 50s TV. There was a show called The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. Apparently fairly bland kind of comedy show. I haven't seen it and I hope I'm not disrespecting anyone. This is what I've read. I've never seen it. I can't tell. And they play Henry Millikan and Helena Millikan. As I say, Ozzie Nelson and Harriet Nelson. And they do give a reasonably good turn. They are both kind of very and forgetful. It's kind of interesting, though Helena is way more forgetful than Henry. Henry is a scientist who keeps trying to come up with new creative things. There's a point where, in exasperation, another scientist who has been shown the latest piece of work that doesn't work, talks about, the Rosetta Stone and perpetual motion machines and things like this that he's demonstrated but failed to deliver in various presentations each year. And they are disgusted with him. He takes it bad. But Helena, Harriet Nelson, it kind of says, well, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. They're an optimistic couple. We do get the message loud and clear that Helena is extremely forgetful, and Henry is kind of, for example, when the experiment fails, he says to her, "Look, my dear, can you tidy up for me and make sure you come and get me at 1 a.m. on the dot? I need to be stopped. I need to stop working at that time." Meanwhile, he goes back to his work. She does tidy up. But when he finally looks at the clock, it's 4 a.m. She's totally forgotten. That's part of the story, which isn't that strongly played up, actually, is that she's extremely forgetful. He, in the meantime, reckons that he's discovered something in his lab that guarantees immortality. He thinks he's created a serum that will reanimate you once you die, and then you cannot die. So shades of Herbert West from H.P. Lovecraft here, but played for comedy, really. The next week, Henry invites his nephew, George, played by Roger Davis, interestingly played by Roger Davis, to come witness this next experiment. And essentially, He is also a physician. He examines Helena, who's not looking well, appears to be dying, and he can't work out what it is from, and no medication seems to be working. Henry's not that bothered. He goes, "Oh man, she's forgotten. She's gonna, she's forgetting to die almost." It's kind of like that. She's gonna be late dying. George is kind of taken aback by this statement. And then Helena tells George, her nephew, that yes, she's taken a poison at Henry's suggestion because Henry says he can reanimate her. George says, "Why would you do such a thing?" And she says, because Henry's going to bring back to life. They're eternally optimistic. Helena does die. She does not look well. We do not see the corpse. We do not see it dead. But Henry injects her with his new serum and invites his nephew George down to witness the awakening. Henry starts calling her name as if trying to wake her up from, being asleep. But she stays dead. And of course, this is another failed experiment, also it appears. And George has to phone the police. And he says, "You know what?" And George says to his uncle, "You know what this means? We have to tell, but it means you're probably going to end up in a hospital." He goes, "Without Helena?" It's kind of like that. He wanders off to himself, apparently to wait for arrest, but he in turn it's a bit so experienced. He in turn kills himself with poison, I believe. And it's tragedy all around, but then suddenly Helena wakes up saying, "George, where's Henry?" He turns to look at her, tap on the shoulder. She does look pallid and very deathly, but she is alive. She says, "As usual, I'm late." But we see her nephew sort of start to go mad at this point. What has happened? What has he done? What has he said to his uncle that's caused him to kill himself where he should have waited? Things like that. It's an EC tale, basically. It's a weird little story. It's reasonably well played by Ozzy and Harriet Nelson. Kind of lightly and for laughs. Other casting may have made this a completely different tone, but it's kind of fun and it's okay. It's probably one of the better of these season 3 episodes. There's been a few misses. This was okay, and I'll probably remember it for some time to come. There's a little I wanted to say about Roger Davis. In fact, I use as a reference to the Night Gallery a rather good book called Night Gallery, Rod Serling's Night Gallery, an After Hours tour by Scott Skelton and Jim Benson, and in it they talk of a story of Roger Davis, who says it felt weird between these two icons of an earlier era's sort of comedy, living room. Everyone thought they knew him, kind of thing, and he was kind of surprised they didn't cast one of their sons. Apparently, the Adventures of Ozzy and Harriet had not just these two, but the actual real life sons of them, who were also in the cast, and he kind of felt that he was surprised that one of those wasn't cast as the nephew, but he wasn't. Roger Davis did go on to work in Alias Smith and Jones, which was a famous kind of Western TV series at the time, where the main actor, one of the Smith or Jones, I can't remember which one, unfortunately committed suicide. But he took over that role, but it didn't really stick. The public didn't really take to it, the change in personnel of a main character. And the show didn't run for much longer. But that was kind of his claim to fame in American TV. That was the program he was most on. He did also comment that when he was talking to Ozzy Nelson had a strange kind of hum-ha way of speaking. He found himself starting to speak in that pattern, and the director had to put him straight. Don't do that. That's Ozzy's thing. You do it your way. And he said, I couldn't help it. I was kind of caught up in it, which is kind of interesting. The direction's okay, and I find it reasonably entertaining. So I'd say it's an okay story. The second story is much shorter, Smile Please. This one was written and directed by Jack Laird, and it's kind of typical of Jack Laird's short ones in that it's not very good. There's one in particular I really like, which is The Phantom of Opera, but the rest of them not so good. This one, though, I have to say, there is something notable in this, which is Lindsay Wagner appears very young. She's 20 when she made this, pre-being the Bionic Woman. She's dressed up very smartly, and her and an older man are kind of going down this staircase, and she's affecting a British accent. Apparently, that wasn't part of the script, that wasn't part of the direction. She just decided it felt right to do, this oldie-worldy thing. English seemed to be the right accent this point, and she does a passable job. Basically, this older man has promised that there's a vampire down, and she could be the first person to ever take a picture of a vampire. But the twist is there's nothing in the coffin, and the man that's led her down there is the vampire, and he goes, "Smile," and when he smiles, well, you see his teeth. Yeah, not great. I think it's about 1.5 minutes long, so there is that. Okay, it's better than some of the others, but it's it's throwaway. I don't even know why they included it. They could have put just a little more material in the first story, just had the one story, really. But, Jack Laird was the producer. Maybe he felt creative. I don't really know. Can't really recommend that too much. Can't remember if I mentioned this first aired on the November the 12th, 1972. And, we're in the 5th episode of season 3. And season 3 is looking a bit flakier. There's some exceptions. But it is looking a bit weaker overall than, the earlier seasons, I have to say. Okay, I am going to wind up there. Before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to